The question I hear a lot from parents is, I have a kid who isn't motivated, and I need to tell them what to do, otherwise they wouldn't do it. I need to tell them what to do,
Yep.
otherwise the homework
Yep.
wouldn't get done. I need to
Yep.
tell them to practice their piano, otherwise the piano wouldn't get practiced. And so I
Yep.
think a lot of parents are at a loss
Yep.
of what to do when they see their kids as having no motivation.
Okay. So this is really important. What oftentimes looks like a complete lack of motivation is actually anxiety. So two things. If a person doesn't want something, you can't make them what they don't want, and you can't make them not want what they do want. But I would suspect that like 90% of the people who are saying this actually have kids who care deeply about doing well, particularly in school. Because for kids, school is their work. Kids don't want to go to school and feel like they're dopes. They don't want to feel like they're dumb. They don't want to feel like they're behind everyone else because it's really, really stressful. But what a lot of times happens is kids affect, an air of, it's stupid, who cares about this anyway? And what a lot of times when they're saying this is stupid is what they're really inside thinking, it makes me feel stupid. And the more that we lean on kids, you got to do this homework, you got to do this, you got to do this, we increase the stress. And this is important. The major manifestation of anxiety is avoidance, is
Mm.
avoidance. So the more crucial we tell kids that this is, the more stressed they are, the more that they avoid it.
There's a great line in a book called The Explosive Child where they say
Yep,
their mantra
yep.
is kids do well if they can. And I wholeheartedly agree with that.
That's exactly right. And we a lot of our thinking, including the collaborative problem solving, absolutely comes from Ross Green, where he was working with kids where say, listen, if you don't do this, kid, I'm going to nail you to the wall. And they'd walk downstairs and they'd get the hammer and nails and say, let's do it. And curious, and this as a pediatrician, that a lot of times children, teens, but especially children who look like they're really poorly behaving and they're having meltdowns about everything. This is important. Almost always, those are simply children who have a more sensitive stress response. And we tend to come down on them harder when their tolerance for being told what to do is even that much lower. And so for a kid who seems not to be motivated in school, a couple of things. One, there is nothing like natural consequences, right? We tend to inflict logical consequences on these parents. Natural consequences are what we want. So if a kid doesn't study and bombs a test and gets a crappy grade, right? They come, oh, that's so unfair. I studied like crazy, and Mr. Johnson put things on. They didn't even say it was going to be on this. And you're thinking, study? Buddy, dude, you were like 6 hours on your phone after 4 hours of watching football. Give me a break, right? And part of this is also taking the long view and letting kids struggle through and suffer through and learn from natural consequences rather than our jumping in and doing it. Our son Matthew is he's just the best human. He's just the best. But he's ADHD, and so everything was kind of done last minute. So we got this email from his teacher, his math teacher. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, I've been noticing that Matthew's showing up at school with his homework undone. He seems to be really stressed by it. Can you please make sure that he gets his homework done at school? Or sorry, gets his homework done at home. And I'm like, Dear Mr. C, what you're seeing is the natural ramification of a boy who procrastinates. Matthew, you may or may not know, is ADHD. We've made it really clear that this is his homework and it's his responsibility to do it. But we've offered, we've offered help in any possible way we can. I, as you know, am an SAT tutor, so I certainly know fifth grade math pretty well. But we're simply not going to chase him around the house and act like it's our job to get him to do his homework, because that will make him weaker, not stronger. Because we're thinking someone other than him is responsible for his work, right? That being said, this is our first run through, with a middle school age boy. You have a lot of experience. If you have specific suggestions for him or for us, we'd love to hear them and we'd be happy to incorporate them. But until then, we're going to let him keep working his way through, knowing that he actually likes math and he's experiencing this stress. And I think this will be part of his learning process. Sincerely, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson. And so I'm convinced that he was doing this because Matthew would get great grades on the exams, right? But would get like zippy on the homework because he was doing it at the last possible moment. But the teacher was trying to make it feel like Matthew's homework was our responsibility. And he probably feared that we were going to act like Matthew's homework was his responsibility, when the reality was Matthew's homework was Matthew's responsibility. And it's worked out great.
I think it's tricky though, because as parents, a lot of times I feel like we know what's best for our kids. With my kids, for example, I have two kids that are self-motivated with homework. They do their homework. I don't have to nudge them. It gets done. I have one kid, however, where she has homework and it's most often not done. She'll get zeros back from the teacher. The music's playing a lot at home. She's dancing. She wants to watch TV. She wants to do anything but do her homework. And for myself, it's hard for me to watch this because I want her to do her homework. I know it's best for her to practice her math.
What grade is she in?
In fairness to her, she's going into the third grade. So last year we gave her a pass. There were a lot of homework assignments that weren't done, but it was hard for me to
It's hard for you
know
to
how to
watch.
tread that line.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. My son, at some point, my lovely wife, who she's a very fine educator, teaches Latin at a local school. She said something to the effect of when Matthew was in full flower, adult ADHD middle school, and she said, "It kills me to watch him waste so much time." And supportive spouse that I am, I said, "Don't watch." And so, right?
Okay.
I'm assuming. So, is she the youngest of the three?
She's the youngest of the three, but I did ignore it last year. I didn't want her to see our disappointment when we get back zeros from school for her missed homework assignments. A lot of it too, I felt bad that the teacher might view us as not being respectful to her,
Yeah.
not encouraging her more to do her
Right.
homework.
Right.
But I'm really trying hard to tread that line where I encourage her to do what she should be doing in school without her seeing any disappointment from us.
Yeah. So a couple thoughts. I mean, one, you as a pediatrician know that there are developmental guidelines, and some people are in front of them, and some people are put behind them, right? And so just because the kid's behind now, we fear that she'll always be behind, right? What I would say that for all of your listeners is the second chapter of our book has the title of "I Love You Too Much to Fight With You About Your Homework." Because Bill was asked, I don't know, in the 80s to write an article about how to help kids with homework, because parents say, oh my gosh, I dread dinner time because after that it's 3 hours of chase my kid around the house trying to get him the homework wars. And what would happen is parents put 80 units of energy in to try to get a kid to do 20, and they get stressed out because it's zero and whatever. They go to 90, the kid goes to 10, and it doesn't change until we change our energy. And so what we suggest is this idea is, listen, kid, I love you too much to fight you about this. Look, I couldn't make you do this stuff. What we tend to do, we think we can, we make it so painful that the kid finally gives in. But then if you go back to self-determination theory, they sacrifice their autonomy in order to hold on to relatedness with us, because if we're so mad at them all the time, they can't risk. A third grader can't risk having the disapproval of mom or dad. It's existentially threatening, right? A teenager can say, I'm out of here, people.
Not to take this to an extreme
Yeah.
example, but there's so many stories where you see very successful, high achieving adults like the Williams sisters, Whitney Houston, the Jackson Five, where you see them as so accomplished, but then you learn that their parents were really pushy to the point where it severely affected their relationship when they became adults. And who wants that? I'd much rather have a close relationship with my kids a million times
Right.
over.
Yep. So the through line I think on here is where you, because you mentioned before about expectations of clean your room once a week, whatever it happens to be. Say, listen, let's talk about expectations for schoolwork. My understanding is that your teacher gives you homework to do every night, and with the idea that that you're going to get something out of it. You start with, well, what do you understand about homework? Do you understand why your teacher gives it to you? Do you feel like you get anything out of it? And you ask all these open-ended questions. And then say, do you want to do your homework? And she's probably going to say, well, yes and no. It's so boring and so irritating. You say, yeah, and then you validate. So yeah, I get that that's kind of annoying. You'd rather be out playing with your friends, right? But you may not want to do your homework. But do you want to get it done? I mean, does it matter to you if you show up with your homework done or not done? All these open-ended questions. Says, yeah, but it's so annoying. Then you offer help. Say, well, would it help? I mean, I get that that's kind of dreary. You don't like doing it. Would it help if I sat with you for half an hour just so you can get this done, and then you can go off and play, right? So we take force off the table, say, I'm not going to be responsible for getting you to do this, but I'll have office hours. I'll check your work, right? I'll bake you cookies. We'll listen to music, right? We can go and play and then come and do this, and you just keep offering suggestions or way to help them help her get it done.
You
Yeah.
send them the message that you're there for them if they need it.
That's 100% right. That's 100% right. And I did this with my kids all the way along and say, do you want some help with this? And almost always they'd say no. But every once in a while, "Hey, can you look over this? This does not make any sense to me at all." And so it's that, again, it's that authoritative thing where, where they know that they know that you're paying attention. They know that you're a resource. They know that you care about them, getting done whatever matters to them. But they don't have the sense that you're making them do this, because then, I mean, it gets turned around so backwards. And we need children to understand that they get out of life what they put into it. And so probably if your daughter cares at all about this teacher, she probably doesn't feel great about getting a 0. She probably feels guilty that she forgot to do it or didn't do it. She probably feels that you are disappointed in her, and she worries about that. She probably feels that her older siblings are so much better at this and they're on top of it and they get it done without any problem. Why is it so hard for her? My guess is there's a whole bunch of stuff that's going on inside of there, right? And in some ways, I could give a fig. Do you know this, by the way? Do you know how much homework in elementary school contributes to learning?
0?
0. Precisely 0. So it's really hard for me to get whipped up as many people want to do, parents in school and teachers, and everyone's well intended about homework, knowing that it contributes so little to learn.
But Ned, their kids may never get
Yeah.
into an Ivy League school if they don't get started on Mandarin and Spanish and algebra before middle school. Isn't that right?
100% the way people think. And so, look, I'm a guy who helps people get into college. I want every child to be as educated as he or she can be, because it's good for them and their lives and their futures. And it's good for your families. And it's good for
Yes.
schools, and it's good for community. It's good for the whole bloody country. I'm so grateful that you had 84 years of your life, I'm teasing you, to become a pediatrician, to help people in all the ways that you do. You spend a lot of time learning. And thank goodness you did this, because you help people every darn day.
You're too kind. Thank you.
And I mean it. I mean, my kids have had such a run of medical things, and I'm so grateful for people who know stuff that I don't know. But I will tell you that the approach that most people fall into, where we tend to be controlling and we don't support autonomy, and initially it looks great, and they dutifully fall in line, but the long-term outcomes on this are really a disaster. When you looked at in the early aughts, before we even had iPhones, right? Young people were 5 to 8 times more likely to endorse symptoms of anxiety and depression than people were during the Great Depression, during the Second World War, during Vietnam. And so it's simply this, that the effects of stress hormones on developing brains is terrible. And it leads to the mental health outcomes that we do not want for children. I mean, at this point, 40% of girls test positive for anxiety sometime in high school. And it's not that you can't address anxiety, but from our perspective, the major work should be not in treating mental health, but in preventing the development of mental health disorders. And I walk this walk with my ADHD and autistic, my ADHD son and autistic daughter. And we have this idea that we either can support our kids in ways they're not controlling, or they can be excellent. If they're going to be excellent, we have to ride them all the time. And it is just not true. And if you haven't read the book, pick it up, because arrogantly, the science is on our side. The science supports this. I mean, half this research wasn't even done with humans, it was done with rodents. That this need for a sense of control is wired in every human being. And we were reading the research on a clinician, pediatrician, who worked on the need for autonomy in 2-year-olds. Like, what are the first full sentences? Not the boss of me, my daughter, I do it, right? That need, these are foundational human needs: to feel competent, to feel relatedness, to feel a sense of autonomy.
This is so well said. Such wonderful reminders. I encourage everybody listening to pick up both of his books, The Self-Driven Child and What Do You Say? How to Talk to Your Kids to Build Motivation, Stress Tolerance, and a Happy Home. And ultimately, what I love is that the foundation, what I gathered from your books is how important it is to have a good relationship with your children. So I really appreciate all of your reminders and all of your research. And so thank you so much for all that you do.
Oh, you're welcome. I will leave people with this. This is a friend of ours who wrote a book on making good decisions, one of Sheila Olson, who's a neuroscientist, was at Hopkins, just stunning human being. And there's a statistic in her book. This is going to make people cry or throw a book across the room. And it's this: if your children leave your household at the end of high school, by that time, they will, on average, they will have spent with you 90% of all the time they will ever spend with you in their lives.
Sad.
Pause. Sad, right? So the relationship that we have with our children going forward, and frankly, how much time they want to spend with us coming back, a lot of that probably has to say with how we treat them early on. And from our perspective, we want to treat kids respectfully. We want them to feel that we love them unconditionally, that we trust them, that we support them, and we know that they're capable, because we want them to go off in the world feeling trusted and feeling that they are capable to build and run successful lives. And check in with us from time to time and tell us all about how great it is, and ideally even ask for some advice, but to have the sense that what they need to run their own lives, that it's already within them.
It's amazing. Thank you so much. I couldn't agree with you more. I really am someone who believes that true wealth in life really is your relationships. And at the very top of
100%.
that is your relationships with your, with your close family, specifically your children, your spouse, your parents. So thank you so much for giving advice on how to make that happen. So I love all your
Thank
work
you.
and I really appreciate all of your time.
Well, thank you. And thank you for this opportunity to chat with you. It's been terrific.